Hey everyone. Please support what I do to help keep Greyhawk alive by subscribing to the channel. Also, please consider becoming a channel member to get early access to videos, exclusive live chats, quarterly adventure modules, and more. Thanks, and enjoy the show. So I've been thinking about what is it that makes Greyhawk different than the other D&D settings out there, and I wanted to talk about it today on Greyhawk Webinar. So what got me thinking about this was the fact that for a long time now, Wizards of the Coast has used the Forgotten Realms as their baseline, standard setting, and it's my belief that the reason they haven't done anything with Greyhawk beyond a few little one-offs here and there, no real actual setting material, is because they think that Greyhawk is too close to the Forgotten Realms in terms of theme and presentation and so forth. And they are afraid that it's going to directly compete with the realms, which they see as a more profitable uh, setting. Um, and I want to talk about what is it that distinguishes Greyhawk from other settings. I'm going to get to the Forgotten Realms next because that's the big one. That's the gorilla in the room. But when you look at some of the other, most of the other settings that Wizards of the Coast has, you get things like Eberron or Planescape or Sun, Ravenloft, um, Bryn. These all have right? They're specific, Spelljammer. They're very specific niche settings, right? Ravenloft is gothic horror. Dark Sun is this post-apocalyptic, psionic wasteland. Spelljammer is this sort of science fantasy spaceships thing. You can very easily hang your hat on it and say, okay, this is that. Birthright is about domains and so forth. It's very easy to define them. They because they're very specifically designed to do one thing and do it well for the way they do it. Kryn is all about the War of the Lance. They've done other things with it. Obviously, they've taken it, they've pushed out the timeline, but it all comes back to that War of the Lance. That's what it's for. It's about epic quests. Um, and uh, so it's very easy to distinguish Greyhawk from those because Greyhawk doesn't do that. Greyhawk doesn't, isn't about gothic horror, although it can have gothic horror. It's not about science fantasy, although it can have science fantasy. It's not about post-apocalyptic psionic wastelands, although you could have that in there. And that I think now we're starting to kind of get around what Greyhawk is. Greyhawk is a generalist setting. Greyhawk is the kind of setting that you can plunk just about anything into. Um, and it fits, it doesn't feel tonally discordant if you put these kinds of things in there because the Flyness is such a broad and varied region. You can fit all kinds of things in it, or if you need to go a little far afield, you can. This is why something like Spelljammer works in Greyhawk, because we already know from Gary's original campaign, somebody tried to go to the moon. It's already there, and so it fits in a way that spell jamming never really fit all that great into something like Dark Sun or Kryn or something like that. It feels tacked on, but somehow with Greyhawk, it feels, yeah, okay, that makes sense. You could do that. Um, and I think you get the same sort of thing with Forgotten Realms. Now I'm going to segue into the Forgotten Realms as where the rubber hits the road. Because the Forgotten Realms is also a generalist setting, and it is superficially therefore very similar to Greyhawk. They're both quasi medieval European settings. They're both generalist settings. You can have all kinds of different things in them. But I think one thing that distinguishes Forgotten Realms from Greyhawk is the sort of editorial voice of the creator that you see in it. When you look at anything that's Forgotten Realms, even stuff that isn't written by Ed Greenwood, it feels like Ed Greenwood. It is very tonally consistent throughout the Forgotten Realms. You know, if you products that have been written years after the Gray Box came out and by someone very far removed from Ed Greenwood, still has that same feel and tone to it. It's this very high magic, very high level spellcasters running around directly intervening with the PCs. You know, you got Elminster sending people on quests, that kind of thing. Um, so you get this tone that is very obvious and very um, I don't want to say heavy-handed is the wrong word, but it is very distinctive. Compare that to Greyhawk, where you have, when you had the gold box, which to my mind is the definitive Greyhawk work. Um, it does have Gary's tone in terms of the prose. He's got a very distinctive style, kind of archaic, um, uh, brief, and evocative at the same time. Um, Not very verbose, which is the opposite of the realms. But once you leave, once 1985 came and gone, and you've got other authors taking over. The tone shifts radically between what was before and what was later. Like the Carl Sargent stuff, very deliberately doesn't try to sound like Gary, except those works where he's directly quoting Gary's work. And even the modules early on in the late 70s and 80s, when you had another author writing a module that was either written for Greyhawk or retconned into Greyhawk, it can feel very tonally different than other things. And so early on in Greyhawk's history, it had this feel of uh, many different authors with many different styles and many different voices all coming together into a single thing. So that tone is a big thing, I think. Now, like I said before, they are both quasi medieval European in nature. So superficially, yeah, you can kind of make the argument that they're kind of the same. But I think because there is that kind of homogeneity in the Forgotten Realms that you don't see in Greyhawk, I think that's where the chief differences lie. Because and I say this as a fan of the Forgotten Realms, so please do not take this as a dig. But when you go to one place in the Forgotten Realms, it feels pretty much like any other place. And I say, like I say, when you go to Cholt, the jungles of Cholt, for example, um, you still get that feel, that heavy hand of Ed Greenwood is felt there, in the same way that it is in Icewind Dale. Um, or Dale Lands or Waterdeep. And when you try to do that in Greyhawk, and it might be because I'm very much attuned to Greyhawk, but for me, something like the Hidden Shrine of Tamalakan has a very different feel than, say, um, Village of Hamlet. And I don't think it's just because of the author. I think it's because of the nature of the setting. And that is, to my mind, how I would differentiate Forgotten Realms from Greyhawk. Is that Greyhawk is a amalgamation of many different voices. It is um, a but one in which those voices are still allowed um, to be heard and make their own distinctive stamp on the setting. Whereas in Forgotten Realms, like I say, it all feels like it could have been written by Ed Greenwood. And it's deliberate and it's a design choice and it's an aesthetic I can respect. Um, but because of that, Greyhawk is much more experimental. And that also derives from the fact that it was obviously, one of the first earliest D&D campaigns. Of course it feels experimental because it was. They were doing all of these different things for the very first time. Putting a spaceship level into a dungeon. It was never done before by definition. So many things were never, uh, the all these things were brand new and experimental, and so Gary was throwing all kinds of things in there um, that didn't necessarily tonally match, and it's because of that kitchen sink quality, in my opinion, that Greyhawk has a very different feel than Forgotten Realms. In Greyhawk, you can actually have a nation, for example, in the Flanaess, um, that feels like medieval Switzerland, where which is really different if you just travel a few hundred miles away in setting from some place like like the city of Greyhawk, which feels like Lonkmar out of uh, um, Fafhrd and the Grey Mouser. And you have these distinctive things, and you can mix science with fantasy, you can mix horror with fantasy, you can mix post-apocalyptic themes with fantasy, and it all seems to work because Greyhawk is by design kind of this patchwork of different things. I mean, um, the original plan was to have different authors own little pieces of the setting and have them develop it, and you see this. Um, uh, in the Spindrift Islands, which was Len Kafka's thing. The Lendor Islands now. So, and there were other plans to do the same thing in other parts of the world, and it lends itself to that kind of this is over here and this is over here, and they're really, really different, and they feel really, really different, but they're all still part of one coherent world, and it all makes sense because of the nature of that world. So that's to my mind the chief thing that makes Greyhawk different is that you can throw just about anything into it, and it feels right. It feels like it works in a way that you don't get that in Forgotten Realms, which has a lot of variety and a lot of stuff. But if you try to do something that doesn't feel tonally the same, it sticks out. Whereas because Greyhawk doesn't have that uniform tone by design, things that would be anomalous anywhere else are just part of what you expect, because you expect the unexpected in Greyhawk. In Forgotten Realms, you expect things to be pretty realmsy wherever you go. Same thing with Dark Sun. You don't expect there to be a fairy kingdom in the middle of some desert somewhere, or so you can see that where it goes in all these other settings. So anyway, that's my thought on what makes Greyhawk different than other settings. I'd love to hear your opinions. I'm sure this one's going to get a few pushbacks. So let me know what you think in the comments. Hope you're having a wonderful day, and I will talk to you all later.
Thanks for watching today's video. Please remember to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Below you'll find links to my Patreon, which helps make these videos possible. You'll also find the web store where you can buy my books, and my blog where you'll find all sorts of free downloads and other articles. Thanks, and have a great day.